days of October 23rd to 26th, 1944, bore witness to the greatest naval engagement ever fought, taking place on and above the waters of the Philippine Islands. As American and Japanese ships, submarines, and aircraft attacked along the shores of Leyte Gulf, one American naval pilot, with just his wingman and barely enough fuel, intercepted 60 hostile Japanese planes intent on taking out the U.S. fleet. David McCampbell and Roy Rushing together downed 15 enemy fighters, an achievement unequaled in naval aviation. For McCampbell, this was his second ace in a day, shooting down 5 planes during one attack. In his 7 months of combat duty in the Pacific, David McCampbell would ultimately be credited with 34 air-to-air victories, a feat unprecedented in naval aviation. This former collegiate diving champion and decorated officer is more than just the Navy's all-time fighter pilot. He is the Navy's ace of aces. David McCampbell's childhood reflected the industrial and real estate booms of the early 20th century South. The McCampbell family had several businesses in Bessemer, Alabama, a hub for the burgeoning iron and steel industry, where he was born in 1910. By the time he was 10 years old, McCampbell's father opened furniture stores in West Palm Beach, Florida. In both places, his adventurous spirit in swimming and flying was fostered by his family.
I've always been interested in swimming, even back in Alabama. Dad used to take us out to the lake about every weekend. Back in 1919, my grandfather bought one of the war surplus Jennies, and I had a couple of fights in that.
In 1923, he followed a family cousin to Virginia's Stanton Military Academy. There he excelled in its military code and athletic competition.
And I've begun to take up diving and swimming. With Stanton Military Academy, we had a good coach, and I was one of the 2 divers.
After graduation from Stanton, he initially studied engineering at Georgia Tech, before seeking a placement at the United States Naval Academy. McCampbell took the responsibility for his education due to the loss of his father's furniture business.
The main reason I changed schools, depression was on, and I figured it was an undue burden on my family to continue my education when I could get a free education at the Naval Academy.
At Annapolis, he again excelled in sport, becoming the intercollegiate diving champion before graduating as a member of the 1933 class of midshipmen.
I gave up swimming completely and went for diving. I was on the freshman team and then 3 years on the varsity.
Like other young Academy graduates, the Great Depression delayed McCampbell's Navy commission. But in 1934, Ensign McCampbell reported to his first ship, the USS Portland. There he served for 3 years with the scouting squadron and performed other duties typically assigned to a young officer at sea.
They assigned me to the Portland. We went out there to San Francisco to celebrate the opening of the Golden Gate Bridge. Willis W. Bradley, he left me as the officer of the deck on the way to take the Portland under the Golden Gate Bridge.
McCampbell's focus and ambition led him to flight school, which revealed his true talents. As a lieutenant junior grade, he trained at the Naval Air Station in Pensacola, earning his wings in 1938.
I was first person to finish Squadron 1. That meant I was the first guy to solo out of my class. The main thing was I was comfortable in the air.
By the late 1930s, McCampbell was hitting his prime as an aviator. Soon, the United States was forced to enter the Second World War. The surprise attack on Pearl Harbor required the Navy to test its young carrier fleet, and the Pacific Theater was the battleground for an unprecedented new way of combat, moving sailors, ships, and planes toward Japan's shores by a campaign of island hopping. McCampbell, now a lieutenant, had been stationed on the USS Ranger. He then reported to the USS Wasp as a landing signal officer.
On the Wasp, it got to be where I held down 3 jobs on there. It was kind of like being on the Portland. So I had the flight deck division, the V2 division, the landing signal officer job. I also used, as flight deck officer, I'd wave them off. And my 3rd job was repair 4 on the flight deck.
On September 15th, 1942, the Wasp, while patrolling south of the Solomon Islands, was struck by 3 Japanese torpedoes. From the flight deck, McCampbell witnessed the sinking of the ship during the Battle of Guadalcanal.
The waters were good, calm. The weather was good, warm. Nothing very unusual. I just had come out of my cabin and was crossing the flight deck when the first torpedo hit. And I at first thought it was a bomb attack.
The attack knocked out the power, causing heavy damage and large fires. Within 40 minutes, Captain Forrest Sherman was forced to call for abandoned ship.
Most of my flight deck crew had gathered around our abandoned ship station. And we had put lines over all along the side of the ship, and I directed people. And then I decided time to go over the side. So I'd always planned to do a layout 1.5 with a full twist, being an ex-champion diver, you see. But when the time came, there was too much debris in the water and people. And I decided to jump. Now, in all, I was in the water about 3.5 hours.
The Navy had lost the Wasp, sunk in the Pacific Ocean. McCampbell returned stateside to Jacksonville and Melbourne, Florida. There he was assigned to train selected pilots as landing signal officers at the specialized fighter training bases along the Florida coast.
After the Wasp was sunk, I came back and conducted a landing signal officer school here in Melbourne. And I was basically a fighter pilot, I thought. And within a month, I was transferred.
A lack of naval pilots was McCampbell's good fortune. And in 1944, he was assigned to the USS Essex, eventually becoming commander of Air Group 15. His tour of combat lasted 7 months. The Essex was part of a crucial carrier fleet that was determined to gain a foothold in the Philippine Islands. As commander of Air Group 15, McCampbell was in charge of fighters, bombers, and torpedo bombers while flying in combat himself. In just his 2nd mission, a life and death struggle ensued with a Japanese Zero. Fortunately, McCampbell managed to save himself, but not his plane.
My plane was shot up pretty badly with anti-aircraft fire. I couldn't lower my wheels in the normal manner. I had to blow them down by an emergency method we had. I couldn't get the tail hook down in the normal manner. I had to crank it down, and I had one of the flaps was shot up pretty badly. But I did get back to my ship, and after I landed, one of the enterprising young mechanics took the good Hamilton's clock out of the plane, and then they pushed it over the side.
The Hellcat's maneuverability and speed helped contribute to McCampbell's dexterity and achievements as a combat pilot. He would have his first kill on June 11th, 1944.
We learned real early that if you hit them anywhere near the wing roots where the fuel was, they'd explode right in your face. Then after that, all of us, we learned to shoot for the wings instead of going for the pilot or the engine. I was kind of eager to test out my ability, but when it came at me, it came all of a sudden. We were making the first strikes on my group on Saipan, and this guy came out of nowhere at me, almost hit on. So I let him have the 50 calibers and shot him down right then and there.
That same month, the U.S. engaged in the first Battle of the Philippine Sea, the largest aircraft carrier battle in history. On June 19, 1944, he led his air group in attacking a force of 80 Japanese aircraft, during which he destroyed 7 planes, his first ace in a day, in what was to become known as the Marianas Turkey Shoot.
We simply tore into them. They had Zeros, Jills, torpedo plane, and Judies, which is a beautiful little bomber. I picked up first with the Judies, and I had so much altitude advantage that when I dove down, I would estimate we were maybe 20,000 above, and they were probably about 15, 16,000. And I dove down on them, and I had so much speed I couldn't hit the leader, but I did hit one of the tail-end Charlies. And I attacked him, thinking that I could knock him off and then go under him and go on the other side and come back with altitude advantage and hit him from the other side. But the Judy that I first went down on blew up in my face, and I pulled up above him to avoid the debris. And so then I went across on top, and I remember thinking at the time, gosh, will I ever get across this formation? Because I figured they were all shooting at me, see? And went across the other side and made an attack on another plane, and I worked my way up and finally got the leader with just the one gun firing. I burned out the barrels on 5 of them.
The battle was disastrous for the Japanese Navy. It lost 3 carriers and 600 aircraft. The U.S. forces took advantage of this, and McCampbell continued to lead his air group through the summer months in numerous engagements. Perhaps the most memorable was a move only David McCampbell could produce, as the aerial acrobat pulled off an improbable feat of flight.
It was over Philippines to the west of Luzon. We were up about, I guess, 14,000. And I saw this Betty cruising along. He was probably 2,000 or 3,000. And I decided to make a run on him. But I couldn't get him going to me fast enough. And I kept pulling up. And finally, I ended up in a upside down spiral. And I was going round and round. A flat spin is what it amounted to. I got out of it and came out right on his tail. And my wingman called me and says, "Hey, Skipper, what the hell kind of run is that?" So I had to apologize for that one. I said, "Don't try it." I think that my ability to get out of this thing was perhaps due to my diving ability.
The Second Battle of the Philippine Sea occurred in Leyte Gulf, one of the largest engagements in naval history. As the Japanese Navy tried to disguise its lack of manpower, McCampbell and other experienced pilots outmaneuvered the Japanese. As he was preparing to lead his squadron on a sortie on October 24th, and with little time to take flight, McCampbell declined to wait for more fuel, leaving the Essex with half-empty tanks.
When we told man our planes, my plane was on the catapult ready to go, except wasn't full of gas. We always degassed it when we put it below in case a bomb attack a fire hazard. So they were gassing it when I went out and manned the plane. Pretty soon word came down, if the group commander's plane's not ready to go, send him below. So with that, I waved away the fueling detail. And I looked at my gauges and saw that I only had, my main tanks were only half full.
With only his wingman, Roy Rushing, they intercepted 60 hostiles and together downed 15 planes, an achievement unequaled in combat aviation.
We make an attack, pull up, keep our altitude advantage, speed, and go down again. And we repeated this over and over till we made about 20 coordinated attacks. And then I looked at my gas gauges and I saw, well, I'd emptied one main tank and I was down on the second one and I was running pretty low. And by now we, having followed this flight away from the task group towards Manila, we'd gotten pretty far away from them. I'd estimate maybe around 100 miles. When I got over the ship, I found they had a flight deck full of planes. And I knew that to launch all those planes would take a good 20 minutes, and I didn't have that much gas left. And the Admiral called the Langley and directed them to launch 9 planes so they could give me a clear deck to land aboard. But when I tried to come out of the landing gear, I gave it near full gun and the engine cocked out on me. So I'd run out of gas there on the deck. I remember the air group commander came back from a flight and he was all excited. He says, "Dave, I just got 5 planes. How many did you get today?" And I was almost embarrassed to say, I said, "Well, I think I got 9.
McCampbell's 7 months of combat in the Pacific Theater was deemed to have saved innumerable lives, keeping Japanese advancements from reaching the American ships and enabling the U.S. forces to pursue the Japanese Empire to its own soil. On January 10, 1945, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt awarded Commander David McCampbell the Medal of Honor, the highest military decoration.
The Navy called me to Washington. That's when I found out that I had been recommended for the Medal of Honor. I guess they figured that I saved lives by interrupting this air raid to the point where no planes actually got in to bomb the ship. And they had an appointment with the president for him to decorate me with it in the White House, and that occurred on 10 January 1945. And the president said to me, says, "Well, Dave, aren't you going to introduce your mother and sister to me?" So I had to turn around and introduce them. And then he said a few words to my mother when he gave her the medal, and then she pinned it on me.
McCampbell's individual bravery and his command of Air Group 15 during its attacks on the Japanese in the Marianas, Iwo Jima, Taiwan, and Okinawa were key to the success of the United States Pacific Campaign. His leadership of the Air Group led to their credit of 315 planes shot down in the air, 348 destroyed on the ground, and over 300,000 tonnage of enemy shipping sunk and damaged. His own record of 34 kills is the greatest number ever shot down by an American pilot in one tour of combat duty. He is the Navy's all-time top fighter ace, and deservedly was given multiple honors: the Navy Cross, Silver Star, Legion of Merit, Distinguished Flying Cross, and is one of the few awarded the Medal of Honor for achievements in aerial combat. In part, the citation reads, "His great personal valor and indomitable spirit of aggression under extremely perilous combat conditions reflect the highest credit upon Commander McCampbell and the U.S. Naval Service.